Howdy doody, buckaroonies, and welcome back to another episode of Morning Coffee with Cameron. There are a whole lot of plugins out there these days. There's a lot of free plugins, there's a lot of really great cheap plugins, and there are a lot of rather expensive plugins. I've been doing production stuff now for somewhere around 15 years, and I've used a whole lot of plugins and different tools during that time span. I think one thing I've learned is that a free plugin isn't necessarily worse than a paid plugin, and an expensive plugin isn't necessarily better than a cheap plugin. It just matters what tool does the best thing for that specific job. The plugin industry has really exploded over the last decade or so, and it's really surprising to see sometimes really basic things being sold and touted as these high-end premium tools when they're really just kind of a pretty basic thing wrapped in a shiny skin and sometimes just a really expensive piece of garbage. However, some plugins do really necessitate a much higher price tag, either by being very comprehensive and feature-rich or just by being very unique. Therefore, they can kind of just set the price to be whatever they want. So today, I wanted to share with you 6 plugins I have that total up to a little north of $3,000 and talk about whether or not I think they're worth it for you. Kicking this party off, we have UVI Falcon, which is probably one of the plugins I get the most questions about, probably because it doesn't have any kind of demo. Falcon comes in at $349, but your price may vary depending on when you buy it because UVI does a lot of sales and bundle discounts and things like that, but for the sake of this video, the price is typically $349. Covering Falcon in detail could easily eat up several hours because it is insanely deep. The long and short of it is basically it is a hybrid between a sampler and a synthesizer. It's kind of like if Kontakt had PhasePlant built into it, if that makes any sense. Building patches and instruments in Falcon is a very much modular experience in that if you see something, you can probably modulate it. You can simply right-click, add some modulation, and there's tons of different stuff, including MPE support for just about everything, making this about as comprehensive of an instrument as you can get. That brings us to the main question then. Is Falcon worth the money? And I think this really depends, I guess, on your expectations and your needs. If you're looking for something that is extremely deep and comprehensive for sound design or patch design, Falcon is about as close to a all-in-one plugin as you can really get. Now, it doesn't do everything, and parts of it do have its limitations and its quirks. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for and how much time you're really willing to put into things. Falcon is certainly not the fastest plugin to work with. If I'm making just a simple lead or bass or pad or whatever, Falcon is probably not the first thing I'm going to reach for, because setting up patches in it does take time. However, the flip side of that being, it takes a lot of time because you can do so much with it. So when I need something that's very complicated and layered and has lots of different parts or crazy MPE things going on or whatnot, Falcon is really in a league of its own when it comes to just pure sound design capabilities. That said, Falcon has a really good factory library, and UVI are pretty well renowned for making some of the best sound libraries out there. So if you do pick Falcon up, there is a good factory library to start playing around with, but it really starts to shine if you sit down and put in the time to learn it and build your own patches. Despite a pretty steep learning curve, once you do get the hang of it, Falcon is incredibly unique and incredibly powerful, and there's really not a lot out there like it. Next up on the list here is the one and only PhasePlant from Kilohearts. Let me just say, I love PhasePlant. It's so good. It is probably one of my favorite plugins ever in existence. It is probably the first thing I reach for anytime I'm doing any sound design stuff. It is insanely powerful, super fun to use, and just a real pleasure to work with. PhasePlant comes in a couple of different flavors. If you just want to buy PhasePlant itself and get the free snap-ins and whatnot, it comes in at $169. But to really get the most out of PhasePlant, you need the big ultimate mega full beans toolbox bundle from Kilohearts, which comes in at $499 and is a value of over $1,200. So it's a pretty good deal. You get a really steep discount if you buy the full bundle, but it is certainly not cheap. PhasePlant, much like UVI Falcon, is very much a do-it-all-in-one solution to synthesizer stuff. Not only does it do all the basic subtractive synth stuff, it does FM, it does wavetable, it does pretty much everything in between, and it's even got sample support. It's a very limited sampler though, so typically if I'm doing something involving samples, I will pull up Falcon as it's a bit more suited to that stuff. That brings us to the question, is Kilohearts PhasePlant worth it? Yes, I cannot state that simply enough. Just go out and go get it. I understand that $4.99 is a pretty steep ask, especially if you're maybe newer or this is kind of just a hobby for you, but Kilohearts is one of very few companies, I think, that do the subscription service model right, in that you can get PhasePlant and everything else they make for only $10 a month, and you get a coupon every year that you can then use to buy all of this outright. So that's pretty awesome. I really don't say this lightly, but I sincerely think PhasePlant is probably one of the best synthesizer plugins to ever exist in the history of music production stuff. It is so powerful, but so easy to use. And I think that's such a critical thing that a lot of companies miss. Even if you're relatively new to music production and sound design and whatnot, you can get so much mileage out of PhasePlant, and it really never grows old. And as they keep updating it, it just gets better and better. And there's not really anything else out there like it. So I cannot recommend this plugin enough. It is incredible. It is one of the first things I reach for in every single sound design session, and I'm sure it's going to be one of the first things I reach for many years to come. Next up, the Arturia V Collection. This is something that, like Falcon, going into any detail on would take way too long. I've actually done several very comprehensive videos going over everything inside of the V Collection, so you can check those out if you want to learn more about every single thing inside of it. Arturia's latest V Collection, being version 8 as of the time of making this video, comes in at $599, and as I'm sure you're aware, it is a suite of recreations of some of the most iconic synthesizers of all time, giving you access to some really cool stuff that you might not ever see in real life. Now, I'll be honest with you right up front, I don't have everything in the V Collection installed because I don't really care for everything in the V Collection. A lot of it is stuff I just wouldn't really use, so I only have the stuff installed that I actively use, and maybe that says something about how much it's worth, but that's entirely relative to you. With that, I've got a couple of my favorite instruments up here, so let's take a listen to a few sounds from V Collection. So the big question, is V Collection worth it? And I think, like Falcon, this one is sort of a mixed bag based on what you want. If you're very into vintage synths and gear and you know what this stuff is, it's pretty exciting to be able to pull up a DX7 and a Jupiter 8 and all that kind of stuff in your DAW and get some really high quality sounds from them that are pretty damn close recreations to the original in most cases. What makes the V Collection most worth it to me as compared to recreations by other companies is that Arturia put in a lot of thought and passion into making these instruments better than they were. There are a lot of other companies out there who recreate synthesizers and try to keep it as close to the original as possible. Personally, I feel like that's a pretty big mistake, and it just makes a lot of these recreation plugins very boring. Arturia, on the other hand, have done a very good job of thinking through what made these instruments great, trying to dial in the character and getting an accurate recreation, but then expanding on their capabilities to make them not only easier and more flexible to use, but a lot more fun to use, especially in the context of modern productions. With that being said, if you're into the sound of retro synths and whatever and the sounds that V Collection can make, but you're not very much into designing patches yourself, Arturia's Analog Lab is a significantly better purchase for the money because it's essentially just a giant preset browser for all of the V Collection. You don't get nearly as much control over the sounds as you would by having the direct instruments, but for pretty much all intents and purposes, it's a great way to get the sounds of V Collection into your productions without the ultra premium price tag. In the end, for me, I don't use all that much from the V Collection. I only have a handful of the synths installed, like I said, but that's because there's so much functional overlap with a lot of the other plugins I have. I think, though, if I was looking to buy one very big collection of synthesizers, the V Collection covers a hell of a lot of ground and would probably be my choice in terms of a big purchase bundle. Choogaloogan right along we go to Pianoteq from Modartt. This is a super cool plugin that's a lot of fun. It is a physical modeling piano plugin. This comes in a few different flavors and ranges anywhere from $149 all the way up to $899, depending on which version you buy. The standard edition for Pianoteq is my general recommendation, and that comes in at $299, but if you want the Pro edition to get access to some deeper parameters, that comes in at $449. Any way you go about it, except for the very light edition, Pianoteq is not a cheap plugin. Pianoteq goes beyond just pianos, though. Modartt have applied their physical modeling tech to a lot of different instruments here. If we crack open the menu, there's stuff like electric pianos, different chromatic percussion instruments, hand drums, steel pans, a couple vintage instruments, and a lot of different things in between. And what's cool is you can layer these together to create layered sounds, or even morph between them to create your own hybrid instruments on the fly. It's really cool for sound design in that aspect. You can get some very unique tones, and you can really just create whatever piano you want, and that's pretty awesome. Is Pianoteq worth it? Yes and no. If you're very into pianos, absolutely. It's a really, really great plugin. I think it beats out a lot of sample libraries out there just in terms of sheer versatility and flexibility. The morphing and layering abilities are really, really fun, and you can create some really unique instruments that are great for cinematic sounds or one-of-a-kind things to throw in your track and add a unique bit of flair. If you're not into pianos, though, and you don't really care all that much, getting a sample library is going to be a lot cheaper, and you'll probably maybe get more use out of it. Pianoteq comes in a lot of different flavors, and I think my honest recommendation is the $299 version because it gives you access to enough parameters to experiment with and tweak. You can load other patches made with the Pro version, but the Pro version packs in some better stuff for sound design stuff, like really high quality sample rates and some very fine-grained control on a key-by-key basis of pretty much every parameter, but that stuff gets really tedious, and most of the time you're probably never going to use it. The price point on Pianoteq greatly varies by how many instruments you want. It doesn't really go on sale all that often, and the discounts they do offer aren't really that steep. So it is a very premium plugin, no matter which way you slice the cake here. However, I think if it is something you are interested in, it is absolutely worth it. If you want to try Pianoteq out, I highly recommend you download the demo because it's essentially fully functional. You can play with just about everything inside of Pianoteq and really hear it for yourself. It's truly an incredible plugin, and it's something I think you just have to experience. Next up on the list, iZotope Ozone 9 Advanced. This is a hell of a plugin right here, and it comes in at $499. iZotope's Ozone offerings, in case you've never heard of them, are essentially an all-in-one mastering suite that covers everything you need to take your song from a mix to a mastered and finalized product. It's been around for quite some time. I first got a hold of it with version 4 or 5, and version 9 is obviously the latest and greatest and probably best version of Ozone yet. Ozone 9 Advanced is a very advanced and very deep plugin. It has an absolutely exhaustive list of features and covers everything you need when it comes to mastering, all the way down to doing things like previewing your music at different codecs right inside of the DAW to get a sense of how it might sound on a crappy cell phone over a 3G network or whatever you might need. It is one of the most comprehensive mastering plugins available in all of the music industry. To get a sense of what Ozone brings to the table, let's bypass it and give a listen to a mix of a track I'm currently working on. Now, let's bring in Ozone and give that another listen. This is the Modern Electronic preset. So for being a preset right out of the box with no tweaks applied other than maybe the threshold a little bit there, it really does kind of everything you need. I mean, that's a pretty convincing master from a preset. Going in and applying some further tweaks and refining this would be better, obviously, because presets are really meant to be a starting point, but I think this gives you a sense of what Ozone can do. I mean, it can really take it from a mix, slap Ozone on the master bus, pick a preset, do some tweaks, to a final mastered product. With that, let's give the Master Assistant a try here quickly. This is the AI tool that says, okay, here's your song. Okay, here's what I want to do to it. What do you think? In the Master Assistant, we can go in, let's do modern, let's do manual loudness and probably medium intensity. This is going to go to streaming services. Okay, so it says for best results, play the loudest portion of your track. Let's skip ahead here to where the drop really kicks in, hit next, and go. Okay, Ozone has now analyzed the track and give me a suggestion here. It did some EQ, it did some dynamics processing, but decided it wasn't necessary. It added a dynamic EQ, and it added a maximizer to bring up the loudness to something acceptable for streaming services. So, entirely AI-generated mastering. What does it sound like? Go! Really not half bad. I think that's a pretty acceptable result with a little bit of tweaking once again, because this is meant to be just a suggestion where we then go in and tweak things ourselves. Pretty good starting point for all intents and purposes. Is iZotope Ozone 9 Advanced worth $500? I think kind of like Pianoteq, my recommendation here is probably to go with something like Ozone Standard. That comes in at only $249. While it is still not cheap, it is certainly more affordable, and I think realistically, most producers won't end up using a lot of the stuff that the advanced version does because it is quite advanced. iZotope's Ozone series is certainly not cheap, and I don't really think it's meant to be. After all, it is a very premier title in the world of audio mastering plugins. It is just as comfortable and adept in a home studio as it is a world-class mastering studio, and while I think it's safe to say a world-class mastering engineer is not going to be slapping Ozone presets on anything anytime soon, at least I hope not, it is a very comprehensive, fully featured set of tools to do audio mastering related tasks. Despite Ozone maybe having a little bit of a reputation as an amateur tool or as a cheat code for mastering, I really don't think that's what it is. Ozone is trusted by professional producers and sound designers the world over, myself included, and it's one of those things I reach for when I just need to turn something around quickly. With demo tracks for sound design projects, for example, sometimes I need to make those in a hurry and get them mastered and get them out the door as fast as I can, so Ozone combined with the AI features just makes my life a lot easier. And when it comes to getting way down into the nitty-gritty, Ozone has plenty of tools to really dial things down and get a lot of fine control over mastering. With that being said, before you crack open your wallet and shell out for something like Ozone, I would really advise you to remember there are a whole lot of extremely high quality mastering grade plugins available out there for free. Everything from multiband dynamics processors to linear phase EQs to saturation tools and stereo wideners to maximizers and limiters to dithering plugins, and everything else in between can often be had for the cost of a simple Google search. However, if you are doing this stuff on more of a professional or at least semi-professional level, then I think it's worth getting something like Ozone that really covers everything you need when it comes to mastering and gives you a lot of really high quality tools to do so. Closing things off, we have my good friend Voltage Modular from Cherry Audio. I wanted to put this one last because the price point is very dependent on how far you go down the rabbit hole here. Voltage Modular comes in a free version with Nucleus, so you can have that for absolutely free. Try it out, maybe learn a bit about modular synthesis and find out if Modular and Voltage Modular might be for you. Overall, I think Voltage Modular is one of the better sounding synths out there because it does everything at audio rate. It's really powerful, it's really comprehensive, and it is probably one of the more accurate virtual modular environments out there to get a sense of what it's like to work with a real modular synthesizer. Now, the big version of Voltage Modular being Core comes in at $99. This comes with just about everything you need to make a huge number of sounds. It's a very comprehensive module list, and it unlocks a lot of really cool capabilities to use Voltage Modular as a modular MIDI processing environment, and there's not really a lot out there like that, and that's especially cool for controlling other plugins that you enjoy or even controlling your favorite hardware synthesizers. There are well over 1,000 modules available for Voltage Modular from a variety of very talented developers, and these are everything from very esoteric mathy, converter-y, blinky light gizmos to a variety of unique and very powerful sequencers to any number of different oscillators and filters and just about every point in between. So if you're like me and you're really into that kind of stuff, it can be pretty easy to spend $300 or $400 on modules before you know it. Voltage Modular makes a whole lot of different sounds. It sounds really damn good doing it, and it is so insanely fun. So let's take a look at some of what it can do. Is voltage modular worth the money? I think this is really up to you, and if you're into this sort of thing, kind of like UVI's Falcon. The free version of voltage modular, being Nucleus, I think is absolutely worth a spin. It's really fun, it's actually quite powerful, and it can teach you a lot about the world of modular synthesis if you know nothing about it. And it's a really good way to get a sense of if voltage modular and other modular stuff might be something that's up your alley. When it comes to the paid versions of voltage and all of the paid modules, I can't really answer that question for you. It's a lot of fun, I really enjoy it, but it is a modular synth, so it's pretty tedious to patch. You have to know a pretty good amount to get the most mileage out of, and it's also a fair amount of experimenting. Like Falcon, it's really not the fastest thing to work with, but when you do learn how to do stuff and put things together, it's incredibly powerful, and it is a very unique platform, especially when it comes to things like processing MIDI, which is one of my favorite things to use it for. Whether I'm just feeding stuff into voltage, having it process it and spit it out to another plugin, or having it spit it out to my hardware synths, or even creating entire performances inside of voltage and piping it out to all of my hardware. In the end, I think with voltage, the jury's sort of out on that one, and only you can answer the question of if it's worth the money to you. And that wraps up a tour of some of the most expensive plugins I own and if I think they're worth it. What do you think of these plugins? Do you own them? Do you think there's cheaper options available out there? Are there other really premium plugins that you've bought that you think are really worth the price? Let me know your thoughts on all that down in the comments below. That wraps everything up for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And as always, I hope this inspires you to get out there and make something awesome.